Attorney General Geoffrey Cox will attempt to convince Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator, to allow Britain to quit the mechanism. During ongoing Brexit negotiations, Mr. Cox is reported to be drawing up plans for a unilateral exit clause in the backstop with a 12-month notice period once triggered. But diplomats and officials were far from convinced that the proposal would provide a key to unlocking the deadlocked negotiations. One EU official familiar with Brexit negotiations said, at a time when the UK is tearing itself apart over the future relationship, we're not going to put an exit clause on the only solution we have. An EU diplomat described the response Mr. Cox and Brexit Secretary Stephen Barclay can expect as two fingers up from Brussels. They added, "This idea is really for the birds, and if the elements ask for the same as Barclay and May have been asking up until this Monday evening, a time limit or unilateral clause, I doubt we can play ball." Mr. Cox is also planning to ask Brussels for legal assurances that the backstop is temporary and that allow him to change his previous advice that Britain could be held indefinitely in a customs union by the EU. Theresa May faces further Brexit rejection after Geoffrey Cox plan to quit backstop rejected by EU. Image Getty. An EU official said the Attorney General's meeting was part of ongoing discussions. They said Michel Barnier and his team met Steve Barclay and Geoffrey Cox this afternoon in Brussels. This meeting is part of the ongoing process referred to in yesterday's joint statement by President Juncker and Prime Minister May. Further meetings will be held next week. Jean-Claude Juncker, the European Commission President, said he was not very optimistic of a Brexit deal being reached after meeting with Mrs. May last night. He blamed MPs for the failure to form a majority for any type of Brexit deal. Mr. Juncker said, "If no deal were to happen, and I cannot exclude this would have terrible economic and social consequences in Britain and on the continent, so my efforts are oriented in a way that the worst can be avoided, but I am not very optimistic when it comes to this issue," he added, because in the British Parliament every time they're voting, there is a majority against something, there is no majority in favor of something. Frans Timmermans, the European Commission's first vice president, said, "We are open for business if the British government has plans or ideas to improve the withdrawal agreement or the political declaration. We will obviously be ready to listen to that and work with the British government, but I have also to be crystal clear, we cannot put into jeopardy the integrity of the internal market." Quote,